Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on a special edition of Crime Time with a very special author with a very special book. And I'll tell you about her and the book in about 1 second. I am your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 14 going on 15 novels of suspense. Thank you, Sarah. My current thriller, The House Guest, is just out and is in a second printing, and that is thanks to you. And I just turned in the final version of One Wrong Word, which comes out in February. So if I drank champagne at this time of day, I would be doing it right now. But I do think if there is champagne to be had, we should be sharing it with the fabulous Sara Divello, whose debut novel, Broadway Butterfly, debut true crime thriller, Broadway Butterfly, is out on August the 1st. Is that right? And it is coming up soon. Let me just read you before I let Sarah talk. I see how excited she is. A couple of things about Sarah. First of all, I'm incredibly honored to be interviewing Sarah about this fabulous book, Broadway Butterfly, today. I would not be in this seat if not for Sarah. Sarah was the debut interviewer on what was called A Mighty Mystery on A Mighty Blaze. And she broke through all the barriers during the beginning of the pandemic, bringing you marvelous new authors every week on A Mighty Mystery, laid the groundwork for me. She is on to huge things now, including this book, which I can tell you is #1 in 3 or 4 categories on Amazon. It is a blockbuster. It is awesome. It is amazing. Let me welcome you, Sarah. And all of you, here is Leslie Harris, and Emily is here, and Deborah is here, and Renee is here, and Marcy McCreary is here, and Renee Herskowitz is here. Look at everyone coming to celebrate and have some virtual champagne with the marvelous Sara Divello, whose book is available for pre-order right now. But don't go right now. Wait for about 30 minutes, and then go grab your copy of this marvelous novel. Let me tell you, Publishers Weekly raves about this and says, this kaleidoscopic mystery impresses with its thoroughness and poignancy. Fans of historical true crime and stories set in the 1920s, and isn't that all of us, will be rapt. And none other than Lee Child said, a great story beautifully told. And there is no higher accolade than that. A great story beautifully told from Lee Child. And this is Sara Divello's first time on this side of the microphone doing an interview about Broadway Butterfly. Leslie says she couldn't be more excited to be here with both of you. Can I just ask, the silliest reporter question is like, how is this feeling today?
It's feeling surreal, Hank. It comes out 1 week from today, and this is my first interview, and there's no one that I would rather do it with. I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm so honored, and I just can't wait to chat with you.
I'm sure you're just calm and cool through this whole thing.
That's me, calm and cool at all times, never stressed, never sweating through my shirt.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because no matter where you are, if you have, you're this gorgeous new novel or somebody with 25 million novels, the lead up to launch is always this chaotic time where you think, I've thought of everything. And then suddenly you think of 10 million things that you didn't think of. Tell me how you're handling this.
I'm laying awake at 3 a.m. or writing down the things I've forgotten in a notebook thinking, oh my God, how could I have done that?
Underneath it all, you just must be so thrilled. The book is out August the 1st, as we said. It's already getting this wave of affection and stellar reviews, and everyone loves it. What do you think about that?
I feel so grateful, so humbled, and just what an incredible response to these incredible people. I felt a burden and an honor to be able to tell their stories because they are real people and this is a true story. And all I wanted to do, my biggest hope, was to honor these people, their choices, their lives, and their truth. And to see them received with such warmth and appreciation by readers is a tribute to them and not to me. And it means so much to see the love that they're getting.
Well, it is quite a bit of love, and I want to talk to you about those characters in just a bit, but I want to talk to you about you for a minute because you have been so generous and so open and so sharing on your social media, which is unbelievable. And we will post all of your links in the chat. But we wrote this book with you, right? We were on the trail with you as you were writing it through the ups and downs, and you were so honest. You were so honest about the process. What was it like for you to share that time? And Irma is saying congratulations. What was it like for you to share that time and be so honest about the tough days and the great days?
That transparency and authenticity are really important to me because I think so often, because we all want to be perceived in a good light and we see what everyone else is posting, there's a really great temptation to present a filtered version of one's reality, and that only makes the rest of us feel really stressed about it. And so I thought, you know what, I just want to peel back the curtain and say, this is me. I am actually struggling, or I'm having a hard time with this, or I'm working on this at 3 a.m. because I'm new to this and I'm trying to figure it out. And I wanted to sort of deconstruct that Instagram filtered idea of, poof, this book hath hatched from an egg with no work whatsoever from me, just poof, here it is. It's like, no, this is 9 years of my blood, sweat, and tears. And I want to share that so that people know it didn't just happen. And I think knowing how it happens makes it feel more accessible, that other people can chase their dreams, whether it's writing a book or whatever, because they know it didn't just happen.
Yes. And I do want to talk about that 9-year process in a minute, but again, back to you just for a minute, and then we'll go on to your fabulous brand new Broadway Butterfly, which is coming out August the 1st and is already the buzziest book in town. Did it help you, though, to come onto Instagram and your social media and reveal how you really felt? Did it help with your own equilibrium as you were writing?
That's a really great question. And I think it did, because when you are revealing, the truth of what's going on, you are letting people in, and that feels good. And also, friends and people that I've connected with on Instagram would share, hey, you've got this, or send an encouraging word or an encouraging note. And that felt really bolstering. And so, I think together we rise, and I wanted to do this, together.
You're such a linchpin of the writing community and reading community on Instagram and all throughout social media. And Marcy McCreary is saying, I could feel the stress, but also the pleasure you experienced through your G stories. And it's interesting because your fans here, who are your friends because of social media, are all cheering you on now. It's just such a gorgeous illustration of community, don't you think? And you being a part of it.
It feels like such a powerful testimony to the beauty of community and the strength of community. And that was the first thing that I noticed about the mystery and thriller community, is that it is very markedly different than some other genres. And despite the fact that murderous, violent things happen on the page, mystery and thriller readers, writers, and lovers are the nicest people I've ever met.
That is indeed true. I am with you 100%. And our commenters, too, are agreeing that us fictional murderers are absolutely adorable and charming. And some of us are good cooks, too, right? It's all a part of it. It's all. Let me tell you quickly about the community, you all. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic, golly, 3 years ago now, by the gorgeous powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us all reading and keep us all talking and keep us all discovering new books. And Sara Divello has been a part of this community from the beginning, and the Blazers are incredibly grateful for her participation until I took over after about a year or so. But she left a legacy that cannot be met. But I do my best. I do my best. I do my best. Let us tell you a little bit about our author for today. Sara Divello is a mystery writer and the creator of Mystery and Thriller Mavens, a popular author series. And we'll get Sara to tell us where you can find her on Mystery and Thriller Mavens, because She has everybody. She talks to absolutely everyone you could ever possibly want. Her book, Broadway Butterfly, comes out on August the 1st, 2023. For her Maven series, as I was talking about, Sara has interviewed more than 300 authors, ranging from the best-selling and world-renowned to the buzziest debut, and it is amazing. And you all should not miss that. We'll put that in the chat. She also serves as the director of social media strategy for the International Thriller Writers Association because she has so much time to do stuff like that while she's writing. Her articles have appeared in Marie Claire, Elle, Redbook, Cosmopolitan, and Women's Day, among others. In her spare time, she loves to teach yoga, cook and eat, garden, and go for leisurely walks with her husband and their beloved rescue mutt. So welcome back to Crime Time, Sara, and congratulations on your marvelous book. So I'm going to let you talk. Finally, you're all like, everybody, Hank, stop talking. Let Sara talk, but I will let you talk now. Tell us a little bit about, let me say Brenda is saying so many books and authors I would know nothing about without the Mighty Blaze. So thank you, Sara, for making this happen. Anyway, Broadway Butterfly, you all. It's a true crime, historical, thriller, murder mystery. How would you describe what this book is?
I would describe it as a true crime thriller. So it is the true story of a scandalous flapper, Dot King, who was found murdered in her bed in 1923, wearing a scandalous lace negligee that barely reached her knees. And the investigation reveals her circle of friends, which spans the gamut from the underbelly of Broadway all the way up to the White House, and literally becomes front page news across the nation because not only of the scandalous, salacious details that are being uncovered, but also because of the incredibly powerful people that it turns out she was involved with.
How did you find out about this? How did you find out about her story the very first moment? Do you remember that moment when you met her?
Oh, I sure do. So I was home in Philadelphia for Thanksgiving, as I always am. And, you know, the day after Thanksgiving, we were sitting around eating our leftover turkey sandwiches. And I was hanging out with my aunts and uncles and cousins, and conversation turned to reminiscing and family stories. And my Uncle Ed shared that back in the 60s, after school let out in high school, he and my Uncle David used to sneak over to the old castle, where they would sneak cigarettes and drink beers as you do in the 60s. And so I'm listening to the story, and my Aunt Joan lives in a very normal suburban neighborhood where every house is a split level ranch, 3 up, 3 down, circa 1950. And I'm looking around this neighborhood, which I have known my entire life, and I was like, wait, what castle? I'm sorry, where's the castle? And he said, oh, there used to be a castle in the next, development over, which looks exactly like this one. And my mind was blown. So all 11 of us pile into 3 cars. We caravan over, a mile away or whatever it was. And there in the next suburban neighborhood, between the Subarus and the tulip beds, are indeed the ruins of a great estate. So 50-foot tall pillars, 6 50-foot tall pillars still stretching to the sky that once formed the grand entrance of this home. Headless statues of Diana and Zeus. The edges of a pool where fountains once gurgled. But then there's someone's house, and standing there, it was so cognitively dissonant that there's somebody's house, there's someone's Subaru, and then there's a statue that clearly is, from some great estate. I mean, it was bizarre. So needless to say,
it must have felt like you had found a portal into another time.
Yes. And it just so happens that I love history. I was a European history minor, and what I love about history is architecture. And I specifically love ruins. So I've gone to Rome to see the ruins of the Colosseum. I've gone to Athens to see the Greek ruins. I've gone to Mexico to see the ruins at Chichen Itza. I love ruins, and the idea that there's once great society that would build these enormous, beautiful, powerful buildings, now exists not at all. And it's so interesting because in 100 years, what will become of our beautiful buildings in our society, or 1,000 years, right? So I was so fascinated to be standing in suburban Philadelphia in a suburban housing development and seeing ruins. So
it's like the poem, "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing else remains." But you dredged up that history. You wanted to tell the story. So keep going. We're riveted.
So I dove into the rabbit hole and, went down the research rabbit hole and learned everything about this once great estate. It had 147 rooms, 3 floors above ground, 3 floors below. It had 28 bathrooms, 24 fireplaces, its own ballroom, its own gymnasium, its own movie theater, its own radio station. It had 70 full-time gardeners just to maintain the pristine grounds. It had staff of chauffeurs and valets and maids and housekeepers and upstairs keepers and downstairs keepers. I mean, the incredible, it defies imagination to imagine the sort of wealth and privilege and grandness. Kim saying that's a lot to clean. Sure is. Fortunately, they have a huge staff to do it for them. And so, I thought, wow, that's
whose house was it? Or castle, and when was it built, and who lived there, and why?
So it was built in the golden age of the 1920s. President Warren Harding was the first notable guest. And then after, they had tea for him, then they had a housewarming party with 1,000 of their nearest and dearest friends in Philadelphia, as you do, like I did yesterday, obviously. And I learned everything about this golden age family. And then I thought, well, that was really interesting, but I personally am not going to write the story of this castle and this family. So I left it. But my spidey sense said that there was a story here. And the daughter in this family ended up being one of my 4 points of view. That is Frances. So 3 months later, I was still thinking about it because I could sense inherently there was a story here. And I went back to it and I found a 1953 book that said, I can't remember the exact title, but it was something like Scandalous Philadelphia, the 100 Most Scandalous Things to Ever Rock the Quaker City. And there was a 1-paragraph, 1-line reference to this house was actually connected to a murder. And I knew, all the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And I said, that's my story. That's my story.
And so how did you figure out the connections with the house and this murder and the people who were involved? How did you peel back that story?
I peeled that onion over the course of 9 years of my life. So I've worked on the story every single day of my life for the past 9 years. And I started this in November 2013. And here we are, July.
So let's go back to November 2013. So you know that there was a murder, and and Emily's saying, yes, always go with your guts. And here Broadway Butterfly is born. Look at that cover, and we'll talk about that more. So back in 2013, you have the house and you have a paragraph about a murder. What did you do next? What did your spidey brain, your spidey sense want you to do?
So I just started researching everything I could find about this. And at the time in 2013, a lot of newspapers were not digitized from 1923. So I spent a lot of time in the microfilm rooms of the Boston. Oh, thank you, Renee. Of the Boston Public Library and the New York City Public Library, feeding microfilm reels into the microfilm machine where and then scrolling through every single page looking for articles about this story, about this case, and learning everything I can. Now, over 9 years, I've amassed over 1,700 pieces of research. So I have found those from going through the now digitized archives, the Library of Congress, the various libraries that I've worked with, as well as in person applying for and getting research passes to the Columbia University Rare Books Collection, the University of Pennsylvania Kislak Research Center Rare Books Collection, the J.P. Morgan Library and Museum Rare Books. So going into these rooms where you have to you have to apply for a research pass, then you get approved or not. And then you go in, you put all your stuff in a locker because they don't want you to throw your drink or spill your drink on the precious works. And then you have to scrub your hands because they don't want the oils of your hands, getting on the pages. Sometimes you have to wear white gloves, and then they prop the books so they don't open too much and crack the
So
spines.
what were you looking for?
I was looking for anything and everything, because at first I thought, even though I thought, stand back, everyone, Detective Divello is reporting for duty, in spite of the fact that I am not a detective. I have no forensics experience. I'm not a psychic, everybody, I've got this. And so I was just learning everything I could, determined to solve this case and tell this story.
Well,
And
that's what I was wondering about, because here's this unsolved murder. And were you looking to see if you could actually solve it? And why wasn't it solved? And why did you think you could do it?
I thought I could do it because naive, willful ignorance. Hashtag poor naive jerk. I literally thought if guts and determination and time and dedication and a willingness to throw myself into this for however many years or decades it takes can get it done, I will get it done.
Why hadn't they done it? Why hadn't the law enforcement solved this murder?
Because it turns out that because of the very powerful, well-connected people, we are literally talking the highest echelon of financial, political, police power in our country, all the way up to the White House. When those people are involved, even peripherally, with a murder, they do not want this murder to be in the news. They do not want this murder solved. They want the issue to go away quickly and quietly and everybody to stop talking about it.
And so let's go back to the people who are involved. If you're just joining us, we're talking about Broadway Butterfly, coming out August 1st by Sara Divello. And Sara is giving away a copy of this book to one lucky commenter. So leave a question or a comment in the chat, and the Wheel of Fun will pick a winner when the show is almost over. So the more times you enter, the more chance you have to win Broadway Butterfly by Sara Divello. So I read in some notes that every person in this book is real. Is that true? And that is quite a bar to set for yourself. How did this book come together, and who are these characters? Who are the point of view characters, at least?
So I tell the story through 4 points of view. Number one, our lead character, Julia Hartman, who is the leading crime reporter in New York City and the rare woman reporter at a time when less than 20% of women worked outside the home. And the women who did work outside the home primarily worked in factories as telephone operators or in shops as sales assistants. The very few women that worked in newspapers. So at this time, there were 3,500 members of the New York Newspaper Union, and there were 35 members of the Women in Newspaper Club. So that's a 1% ratio. So that 1%, those 35 women primarily covered the so-called ladies' pages. So that is astrology, cooking, and advice for the lovelorn, as well as the society pages, which covered fashion and the celebrities of the time, which were the women of society, the very, very wealthy women. Julia is the rare woman who not only works outside the home, who not only works in newspapers, but who is not covering the ladies' pages. She is working the hard-hitting crime beat. She's on the city desk with the rest of the men. And I knew this was a woman, a pioneering woman of journalism, one of the 6 pioneering women of journalism at the turn of the century, who history is pretty much forgotten. Ain't nobody heard of Julia Hartman, and she deserves to take her rightful place in history as that woman who has blazed this trail, I'm using that term, pun intended, for so many other female journalists. And I knew she had to be the lead.
Yes, and she sort of becomes your voice, don't you? You sort of use her. I always picture Julia as you a little bit.
Oh my God, I'm so honored. I'm so incredibly honored. I love and admire Julia Hartman so much. So that is incredibly high praise. So she is my primary character. I really think this is her book, but I tell it also through the head of the NYPD Detectives Unit, and that is Detective John D. Coughlin. He's the head of 1,200 men who make up the Detectives Unit at this time in New York City, and he is the lead investigator on this case. This falls under his domain. The other 2 points of view are Ella Bradford, who is Dot King's closest friend, confidant, and the keeper of all her secrets. She also works for Dot. She's the one who discovers the body in chapter 1. It's not a spoiler. And she's an incredible woman. She's Black, and she's one of the 7 million Black Americans that are part of the Great Migration, which is in the wake of the Civil War and under the rule of incredibly racist Jim Crow laws, made their ways north and east to Chicago, Philadelphia, DC, and New York in search of a better chance. So Ella Bradford, at the age of 21, packs her bags and sits in a, quote, colored waiting room in legally segregated Jacksonville, Florida, to get on the, quote unquote, colored car on the train car, sitting separately from the white people, to go 1,000 miles north to go to New York and make a better life for herself, where New York was not segregated at the time. She's an extraordinary woman, and she deserves to be known. And then the fourth point of view is Frances Stotesbury, who is the daughter of the castle that I discovered, on Black Friday of 2013, 10 years ago. And she is one of the 4 most powerful women in society, again, known as a great hostess of parties. So she's a very different kind of woman. Her job is to throw parties and to, find a good match for her daughter to marry and to launch her son into society and get him into a good college and launch his career as well.
It's such an amazing cast of characters. We're talking about Broadway Butterfly by Sara Divello. I see Deborah and Emily and Pamela and Sherry Steuben, and Lynn Hanman is here, who says, Sarah, you are the perfect person to have done this. Renee says, you're so funny. Catherine Olson is here now, and Sherry Steuben is here, and Pamela Fry-Priest. So many, Leslie Harris, so many people are here today to celebrate this book with you, Sarah. Marcy's saying, so fascinating. It is. And Marcy is also a writer, and I know that she especially will want to know. So you have this incredible mass of information and these glorious characters who just come off the page. But how did you decide what to use and how to do it and how to structure it and how it should all be? It must have been an unbelievable tapestry to weave.
It was an unbelievable tapestry to weave. And it was also, I overwove, Hank. I overwove. So hang on to your hat, hang on to your chair. My first draft was 186,000 words.
Okay, so that's twice too long.
That is twice too long. That is literally over 2 books. So I had a lot of cutting to do. So I think my mantra became separating what is integral from what is merely interesting. And that's really hard because everything is so fascinating to this research loving nerd girl at heart. And so, that was my challenge, was to then cut it down to the bone, cut all the fat, and try to get down to the real marrow of the story.
It's interesting because in investigative reporting, one of the mantras that we always use is select, don't compress. Select, don't compress. Because if you try to smash everything into it, it loses power rather than gains power. So by doing exactly what you did, you really brought this book to life. Do you remember when the one of the first people ever to read it? I mean, you all can hear how compelling this story is. Do you remember the first person you gave to read it and how it felt when you waited for their reaction to it?
Yes. So I gave it to my husband, Alan Nunnally, who just commented and Chuck popped a comment up for us. I gave it to him and I waited with bated breath to see what he would think. Because it's very vulnerable to put your work out there, especially to your spouse or partner, and his support and belief in me and in the story has really bolstered me and sustained me and encouraged me over these 10 years, this decade. And he, believed in the story as much as I did.
I mean, do you think, I don't want to give anything away, Ellen Nunnally, that's your husband.
That's my husband and our dog.
I loved it. That's so great. Pamela Fry-Priest. And Lynn was saying she would have read the whole thing. And one of the things that you can do if you want to know more about the book is to go to Sarah's website. There's a lot of fantastic information, or go to one of Sarah's many events. Marcy says you should release a director's cut with all 180,000 words.
Oh my God, Marcy, I thought of that. Hank is saying, no.
You know, Deborah says this book sounds incredible, and it does indeed. It does indeed. So your job or your goal or your hope or your query was wondering whether you could solve this. And I don't want to give anything away about the book, but do you think you did?
I think I did. So one of my favorite reviews was from Booklist, who said, that I provided enough information for readers to draw their own conclusions. And that was my goal. So in my mind, I feel like I know who done it. I know why done it. I know how done it. And I hope, but I leave room for readers to draw their own conclusions. So I look forward to hearing what people think when the book drops next Tuesday. And like you said, I did include some of that stuff, the incredible juicy nuggets that I've discovered along the way, which is at saradivello.com/ behind the scenes, so that you can walk around the ruins with me. I took videos, and you can see the ruins, and you can see the microfilm room at the New York Public Library, and you can see, the documenting of this research and of this journey for the other research loving nerds like me.
I mean, it's funny because I love to do research on microfilm, even though it's a pain, because you get to see the ads of the time and how things look and what the language was. And it really is total immersion research. You really get, how much an oyster cost, or what did the hats look like, or what did how much was it, right? That kind of stuff comes into it. But
Hank, I looked up what underwear looked like because I wanted to know. And I also looked up, of course, and I looked up, how much food costs. And it was so interesting because when I first started researching, I was only reading the articles and I was clipping them out. And then I interviewed a professor at Boston College who studies the media portrayal of police investigation and police violence at the turn of the century. And he had written a book about it, and he had even included a reference to this case. And he said, I went to BC, to Boston College, and I met with him in his office, and Professor Christopher Wilson. And he said, you're not just reading the articles, are you? And I said, yes, I'm reading the articles to learn about the case. And no, you got to zoom out. You got to look at the ads. And I immediately went back and looked at all of the ads in all of the newspapers. And he was so right, because what is fascinating is that Maybelline was still making makeup. Wrigley's chewing gum was still making chewing gum. People, you see what people care about. Women wanted thicker, more lustrous hair. People cared about their digestion and getting a good night's sleep. People wanted to be slender and shapely. But the things that have changed are also just as interesting. Like, we're no longer using mercury medicinally.
But it does immerse you in the time and the feelings of the time and the needs of the time. It also immerses you in the language of the time. And you do such a good job with that in here. And that must have been a little bit of a tightrope for you.
It was really hard for me for a lot of reasons. Like, did I want to use the terms that would be hurtful and offensive now for historical accuracy? Or do we want to, make it more comfortable for readers today, but are we airbrushing the truth of that time? And what is the value, and what is the the negative of that, and how do we make that decision? And then also looking at conveying the spirit of the time. And so saying, calling women dames or tomatoes, or things like that's the bee's knees for that's the coolest, and don't give me any guff. I'm going to start talking like this all the time, Hank.
You say in the book that this is where sugar daddy came from.
Yes, the term sugar daddy and sugar baby comes from this case. Those terms exist in our cultural vernacular today because of this sugar baby, Dot King, and her sugar daddy, the mysterious Mr. Marshall. And those terms had never been heard of before. Now, they were being used verbally in Broadway, which is the cool kid neighborhood in New York, which was the cool kid city. So people were saying they called money sugar. It didn't start becoming called dough until later, but at the time it was sugar. So you had the sugar barrel was your stash of cash, your sugar daddy, who was, a younger patron. And then you had your sugar papa, who was even wealthier. And then you had your sugar baby, who was the kept woman. So those terms, we are using those terms, all the time? only because of Dot King and this case.
Isn't it? It's wonderful. And you do a wonderful author's note at the beginning of the book. If you will, when you read this, and you will, you should read Sarah's author's note at the beginning of the book to sort of ground you in the time and ground you in Sarah's perfect decisions about how to handle this novel. My final question, and then we'll take some from the audience. You know, all of you, is it's irresistible, isn't it? Isn't it absolutely irresistible? And Margaret is here saying, "Messi is the." The quintessential 1930s radio voice, and it's and Margaret was saying how much, I'm just looking at the comments here, they're pouring in, and so I'm looking at all of you. Sherry Stevens says tomatoes, and, and fascinating, and Kim says your enthusiasm about history around your book is contagious, and it does make you really want to read this. I'm sort of getting in the 180,000 word count now. I'm like,
come over, Hank. Come over. There's a spot for you.
On 60 Minutes the other night with David Gran, who wrote The Wager and wrote Killers of the Flower Moon. And of course, he's a massive researcher, as you are. And he said that the key of doing, of successfully doing a book like his and a book like yours, which I put in the same category, is that you have to be a little bit obsessive, that you have to be obsessive. Do you think and he surrounded himself with the mantle of obsession. He looks at it as a great joy. Do you feel obsessed with her? I mean, about something that 10 years ago you just didn't know anything about.
Oh, I am completely obsessed with all of these people, unapologetically, 1000% obsessed, the way that only an obsessive, anxiety-riddled person can be. I want to know everything about them. I mean, Hank, I got their birth records, their death records, their marriage certificates. I was ready to get a shovel and go dig that body up myself, except, some people were holding me back, who shall remain unnamed. Spoil sports. But if you see me arrested holding a flashlight and a shovel at a cemetery outside New York City, maybe it was me. Maybe it wasn't.
How do you think you've formed, and then we'll take some questions. How do you think you've formed her legacy? How do you think that you've changed her legacy?
Oh, what a powerful, poignant, and beautiful question. Thank you. I want this book to be a legacy and a tribute to all of these people. So the 4 talking points of view who narrate this book, and the 5th point of view, which is Dot King, and she doesn't have a vocal, she doesn't have chapters, but she is the 5th character, and she is, I believe, the thread that holds this together. So this woman was murdered, and a murderer went free. No one did time for this crime. And that is not fair, that you can take someone else's life and not pay for that in some way. And I hope that by bringing this story to the page, even though it is 100 years overdue, that by revealing this case and this killer, that they will be exposed, and that the truth will in some way provide justice for her who was denied justice at the time. And I want this book to be a legacy to Julia Hartman, pioneering woman of journalism who has been denied her rightful place in history. And I want this book to be a tribute to John D. Coughlin, who was denied his ability to do his full job and provide the killer, bring the killer to justice because of reasons which you'll see in the book. And I want this to be a tribute to Ella Bradford, who deserves to be recognized for her incredible courage and bravery, and to Frances Stosbury, who, like so many women then and now, paid the price for men's wrongdoing through personal sacrifice. And that's not fair.
And on that note, I will say it is also a tribute to you, Sara, who saw something unusual, and instead of saying, oh, that's so interesting, you just went for it. And now 10 years later, there's this gorgeous Broadway Butterfly with the best cover I have ever seen. And I recommend this book, you all. It is poignant. It is charming. It is incredibly, exquisitely researched, and it is absolutely a page turner, and it will break your heart, and it will make you happy, and it will make you absolutely riveted in this new time. Let's take some questions. Leslie says, my favorite question to ask authors, who has been your writing inspiration and your favorite authors besides Julia?
Oh my gosh, Julia. Leslie, hi. Leslie, you have to give me your signature Canadian. Hello. Um, so like so many of us who are here today, united in our love of the genre of mysteries and thrillers, I was a Nancy Drew girl and an Agatha Christie girl, and these were my favorite books to read. And as a research loving, history loving, nerdy girl at heart, I also loved the Da Vinci Code, and I loved Dan Brown's ability to weave deep historical research into it because I love to learn as I'm reading. So a book that I've read recently that I really love was Danielle Trussoni's Puzzle Master, and in that same way, the depth of research and learning and sort of nerding out about that, but also being sucked in to, oh my God, I have to know who done it. It's these are the books that have really inspired me.
Yes, I agree. I loved The Puzzle Master. It was genius, genius, genius. We'll have to get Danielle here on Crime Time from time to time. Deborah says, have you thought about doing a second book on the parts you had to cut?
Yes, yes, Deborah, because for me, I had to recognize that perhaps not everyone, that I am not yet Stephen King. I can't put a 1,200 page tome out into the world and think that people are going to, climb that Kilimanjaro of a book. So I had to cut a lot, but I think about that all the time of what about all of this, deliciousness that I had to cut. And so, I've put a lot of behind the scenes stuff on my website. And I do think about, about ways that I could bring that forward as well. Thank you so much for saying that.
It's an interesting thought because my brain is going really quickly about what you could do, what else there could be, the background stories or little novellas about certain people or spirit of the time or chat books or there's a million things. Emily says, are you going to start writing fictional or true crime thrillers after this?
Ooh, that's such a great question. So I think I'm a true crime junkie. I listen to all the podcasts, I watch all the documentaries, and, I am Team Twain. I believe Mark Twain is right. Truth is stranger than fiction. And there's something really, really addictive and fascinating about how the complexity of humanity can really get ourselves in some tight spots.
And out.
And out. Yes, Hank Phillippi Ryan, totally get ourselves out of those tight spots. So I love that. At the same time, I'm such a huge fan of fictional detective, mysteries and thrillers of this incredible, I can't figure out where you are, Hank, of this incredible woman who I've had the great pleasure and honor of hosting 4 times for her 4 books over the past years. I love fiction. So I want to leave myself open to the possibility. I think that every story finds its teller and every teller finds their story. And so I'm going to see what stories come to me next.
But meanwhile, you should just soak up the joy and the glory of your brand new Broadway Butterfly out August the 1st to incredible acclaim and incredible buzz. And we wish you all of the joy in the world. Let's just have the joy of the Wheel of Fun right now and see. Giveaway time is right. Let's just see who wins a copy of Broadway Butterfly, and we will spin the Wheel of Fun. I keep thinking we should have music. We should totally have music. And the winner is Deborah Pross. That's great. Thank you, Deborah. And thank you for being here today and for your really great questions. I love when you participate, and this is marvelous. And you are the winner of a copy of Broadway Butterfly. Not this one. I am keeping this one, but you'll get instructions, Deborah, about who to contact, and we will make sure that Sarah's publisher gets you your very own copy of this book. Sara, you are such a rock star. And Sara, here you go.
Well, Hank, thank you for all of your incredible support. Everybody, Hank Phillippi Ryan was kind enough to provide a blurb for this book and has been so incredibly supportive of me and of this book. So, Hank, I cannot thank you enough. You are not only the winningest mystery writer out there with all of your incredible awards, but also known as a writer's writer who champions other writers. And this genre is better and enriched because of you and your incredible support and cheerleading of other authors. So thank you for everything you've done for me and for everyone in this genre.
Well, thank you. You're bringing tears to my eyes. My pleasure, Sara. Thank you. It's been a joy, and it is a joy. And back at you, sister. You are a pillar of the community, and so many careers have been made around your joy and your enthusiasm and your support. So, congratulations, Sara, you did this. You did this. We were there on Instagram with you every step of the way, and we couldn't be more happy about your incredible, mad, wild success. Congratulations. And we can't wait to hear what happens.
Oh my gosh, Hank, thank you. And I
My-
just want to say, for anyone who wasn't tuning into my every riveting drama on Instagram, I actually saved them all as highlights. It says book journey. And so if you go to my Instagram page, you can relive it should you choose to put yourself through that. You can relive the journey with me.
And you can also go to Sara's website and relive the journey and live the journey now by coming to some of her marvelous events, both real life and virtual. So do find her. Let me just have you hang on for 1 second. If you stick around for about 15 minutes, we have Sandra Miller with her brilliant new Wednesdays at 1. Look at that cover. It looks like an Edward Hopper painting. I love it. And I cannot wait for you to hear about this story. And I cannot wait to ask Sandra about where the idea came from. So meet you back here in 15 minutes. And until then, you all remember to look for Sara Divello's Broadway Butterfly. Now is the time to pre-order, and for Sara in real life. And I'll meet you back here in 15 minutes. Until then, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we'll see you next time.